You know, usually when we sit down to prep for one of these deep dives, I feel like I have a pretty solid mental map of who we're talking about.
Right.
I see the face, I hear the voice, I know the big hits. But today feels a little different.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at a guy who is, I mean, he's ranked number 5 on practically every greatest of all time comedy list. Rolling Stone, Comedy Central, you name it.
He's on the Mount Rushmore.
He really is. A 3-time Grammy winner, a 4-time Emmy winner, a genuine cultural icon.
And yet, when you actually, dig into the source material, the biographies, the old interviews, all the critical essays, the story that comes out isn't really just about comedy in the traditional sense.
Not at all.
It reads much more like a study in survival.
Yeah.
We are talking, of course, about Chris Rock.
Exactly. And honestly, I did not realize how much physical and emotional violence is just baked into his history until we started going through this stack of notes.
It's everywhere.
We think of him now as this untouchable titan, but the road to get there was incredibly rough.
And that is really the mission for this deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need to figure out how a high school dropout who was scraping gum off tables at a Red Lobster in Queens,
I love that detail. Red Lobster.
how he becomes the man who is directing a Spielberg-produced biopic. And I think even more importantly, how he became the guy who could stand still on the Oscars stage, take a literal hit to the face in front of millions of people,
In front of the entire world.
and somehow come out of it with more control than he went in with.
It brings up that theme we kept seeing pop up in all the research, pain into power.
Yes.
It really feels like that is the through line for his entire life, his whole career.
It's the essential mechanic of his career. It really is. Rock seems to have this ability to metabolize trauma. He takes social isolation, physical bullying, professional failure, and then, later public humiliation, and he turns it into content.
Right.
But it's not just content. He turns it into leverage.
So let's go back to where that leverage, I remember where that resistance actually starts, because I was genuinely blown away by the genealogy report.
Oh, it's incredible.
I think most people, myself included, you just think Chris Rock is Brooklyn to his core. Bed-study, do or die.
Which he is, culturally. He was born in South Carolina in 1965, but his family moved up to Crown Heights and then settled in Bed-Stuy when he was very young.
Mm-hmm.
But if you dig into the African American Lives 2 data, that fantastic show that Henry Louis Gates Jr. did, you find something incredible about his DNA that almost predicts his entire future.
This is the Julius Caesar Tingman story. When I read this, I literally had to double-check the dates because it just seemed impossible.
It is remarkable.
Yeah.
So Rock is of Cameroonian descent,
Yeah.
specifically from the Udemy people. But his great-great-grandfather, Julius Caesar Tingman, was enslaved. He was in bondage for 21 years. Now, usually in these historical records, especially regarding enslaved people, the story gets hazy there. The record just stops.
The trail goes cold.
But for Tingman, it's the complete opposite. He joins the United States colored troops during the Civil War.
Which is already heroic on its own. He is literally fighting for his own freedom.
For his own freedom. But he doesn't stop there.
No.
After the war, this man, who was legal property just a handful of years prior, gets himself elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives.
It's just wild to think about.
And he serves 2 terms.
You look at Chris Rock today, a man whose entire brand is speaking truth to power, who enters these elite, predominantly white spaces like the Oscars or Hollywood boardrooms and just says the uncomfortable thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he has an ancestor who was literally doing the 19th century version of that exact same thing.
It puts the Rock resilience in a genetic context.
Mm-hmm.
It really feels like a lineage of breaking barriers.
Yeah.
But we have to contrast that, that distant history with his immediate family environment, which was the real crucible. He's the eldest of 7 kids.
7? I can't even imagine. That is a loud house. That is a constant fight for resources, for attention, every single day.
A loud house in a rough neighborhood. His mom, Ruvely, was a teacher and a social worker for the developmentally disabled. His dad, Julius Rock, was a truck driver and a newspaper delivery man.
A grinder.
The sources all emphasize that his dad was the hardest working man Rock ever knew. But there's tragedy sitting right there at the dinner table, too.
Mm.
His dad died relatively young in 1988 after an ulcer surgery, and Rock later lost a half-brother, Charles Liddell Rock, to alcoholism in 2006.
So he is surrounded by this intense working class grind, but he's also surrounded by the fragility of life. It's not a soft upbringing by any stretch.
Not at all. And then you add the school situation. This is where that pain into power concept really, really clicked for me. His parents, they're trying to do the right thing. They want him to have a better education than the local schools could offer. So they had him bused to schools in predominantly white neighborhoods of Brooklyn.
Specifically, James Madison High School.
And better school, in terms of academics, meant hostile environment, socially.
Oh, the reports in our source material are just brutal. This wasn't just, kids are mean or a little teasing.
No, this was severe systemic bullying.
It was violence.
It was. He was getting beaten up. He was spat on. He was the target every day.
Yeah.
It got so bad that his parents eventually had to pull him out for his own physical safety.
And he drops out.
He drops out of high school, gets his GED later.
Okay, but think about the psychology of that for a second. You are a teenager. You are the outsider. You are fundamentally unsafe in your environment.
Every day.
You spend your formative years watching people who hate you, trying to anticipate their next move, just to protect yourself.
And that is the key.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. When you're the victim, when you're on the periphery looking in, you become a watcher.
You have to.
You have to learn to read the room to survive. You notice the hypocrisies. You notice the group dynamics. You notice the sheer absurdity of racism. That trauma created the observer that would eventually become the comedian. He learned how to deconstruct the systems that were hurting him, first in his head, just to stay sane, and then much, much later on stage.
So he's got this observational superpower developing. He's working at our Red Lobster, but he's also grinding on the comedy circuit. 1984, New York City.
Catch a Rising Star.
19
years old.
Yeah.
And he is not polished. The early tapes, he's raw, he's shouting, but he's getting the stage time.
He's putting in the work.
He's putting in the work. And this is where luck or fate intersects with preparation. Eddie Murphy walks in.
The king. I mean, in 1984, Eddie Murphy is not just a comedian. He is a rock star. He's the biggest star on the entire planet.
Untouchable. Absolutely untouchable. And Murphy sees something in this skinny, angry kid. He doesn't just say, hey, good set, and walk away.
Oh.
He mentors him. He befriends him. He gives him his first film role in Beverly Hills Cop 2nd in 1987. He effectively puts him in the ecosystem.
You would think that's the launch pad, right? You get the Eddie Murphy stamp of approval, then you get cast on Saturday Night Live in 1990. That should be the moment he becomes a superstar.
I think it should be.
But reading the accounts of his SNL years, I mean, it sounds miserable, and frankly, it sounds like he failed.
He did fail. He said so himself later. But we have to analyze why he failed. It wasn't because he wasn't funny.
Right.
It was a mismatch of environment. You have to look at the cast dynamics of that era. This was the bad boys of SNL, period.
Right. Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Rob Schneider, that whole crew.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And their style was very, very specific. It was high energy, kind of frat boy chaotic, so lots of physical comedy.
Farley crashing through tables.
Sandler doing the goofy voices. Chris Rock didn't fit that mold. He was a cerebral, verbal comedian. He needed to talk, not fall down.
And looking at the notes, it seems like he just didn't have the writing support either, which is everything on that show.
That is the death knell on SNL.
Yeah.
You live or die by who writes for you or your ability to write sketches that actually get on air.
Yeah.
Rock felt isolated. He had the Nat X character, the militant talk show host, which was funny, and it allowed him to be verbal.
Yeah, that was a great character.
But he couldn't break out of that box. He was just deeply frustrated.
And it says here he was effectively fired. I mean, he planned to leave, but the show let him go first. That has to be a massive blow to the ego.
Huge.
You make it to the mountaintop, and you just slide right back down.
And the next few years were incredibly shaky. He did a few episodes of In Living Color, but that show was canceled almost immediately after he arrived.
Terrible timing.
He wrote and starred in the movie CB4, which was a hip-hop parody. It has a cult following now, but at the time, it wasn't a blockbuster.
Not at all.
He was at a genuine crossroads. He was in real danger of becoming a remember that guy trivia answer.
But instead of quitting, he retooled. He went back to the clubs, he stripped everything away, and in 1996, he drops the atomic bomb.
Bring the pain. HBO.
I remember seeing this for the first time. The orange leather suit, the pacing on stage, it just felt different.
It was the turning point. If we are mapping the trajectory of his career, this is the massive spike on the graph. Pain didn't just do well. It completely changed the conversation about what stand-up comedy could be.
Mm-hmm.
It won 2 Emmys.
Mm-hmm.
Critics at Time and Entertainment Weekly were calling him the funniest man in America. But more importantly, it established his voice.
And we have to talk about the centerpiece of that special, the niggas versus black people routine.
Right.
Even almost 30 years later, it is shocking to hear. It is so provocative.
It is radioactive, and we have to handle this carefully, but we have to analyze why it works so effectively.
Mm-hmm.
He took a conversation that was happening privately within the black community
For sure.
about class, behavior, internal conflict, the frustrations of respectability politics,
Yeah.
and he broadcast it to a mixed mainstream audience.
It felt dangerous.
That is the word. It was dangerous. It was sociology disguised as dirty jokes. It marked the death of little Eddie Murphy and the birth of Chris Rock as a distinct, powerful entity. He wasn't just telling jokes anymore. He was offering social commentary that made you wince while you laughed.
And that special, it basically bought him his empire. Suddenly, he is everywhere.
Everywhere.
He gets the Chris Rock show on HBO, which was brilliant. I mean, he won an Emmy for writing on that. He's putting out Grammy-winning albums like Roll with the New and Bigger and Blacker. He went from being the SNL cast-off to being the guy hosting the MTV Video Music Awards.
And what stands out here is the expansion of the portfolio. He wasn't just a stand-up anymore. He became an interviewer, a writer, an author. He released the book Rock This.
Right.
He solidified his intellectual property. He understood that to last, to really have a career, you have to diversify.
Speaking of diversifying, let's unpack his Hollywood career. Because for a long, long time, it really felt like Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with him.
That is a very fair assessment.
They knew he was funny, but they couldn't figure out where to put him.
In the 90s and early 2000s, he had some really strong supporting roles. We have to mention New Jack City from 1991. He played Pookie, the crack addict who becomes a police informant.
Calling Pookie? I mean, that role is iconic. And it was so tragic.
It was. It was a serious, dramatic role, very different from his stand-up persona, and he absolutely held his own against Wesley Snipes. It showed he had legitimate acting chops.
For sure.
But then you look at the comedies. Beverly Hills Ninja, Lethal Weapon 4, Bad Company with Anthony Hopkins, of all people.
Right.
He was often cast as the funny sidekick or the loud guy. The transition to leading man status was much, much harder for him.
But then she found a niche, a role that made him ubiquitous to a whole new generation of kids, a role where he didn't even have to show his face.
Marty the Zebra, Madagascar.
My kids know that voice better than they know my own, I swear.
And that is significant. From 2005 to 2012, that franchise made him a global voice. It proves that his vocal instrument, that specific shouting but melodic cadence, is a marketable asset all on its own.
Totally.
But Rock didn't just want to be a hired gun. He wanted to be an auteur. He wanted to make his own Annie Hall.
That's a really interesting comparison, Woody Allen.
Rock has made that comparison himself. He loves the idea of the comedian writer-director. He wanted to write, direct, and star in movies that reflected his worldview, not just recite lines in some buddy cop movie. He tried with Head of State and Think I Love My Wife, but Top 5 in 2014 was where he finally nailed it.
Top 5 was great. It felt so honest. It was about a comedian trying to be taken seriously as a dramatic actor, which was obviously meta.
Incredibly meta. And critics saw that. They compared it to Woody Allen's Stardust Memories. It showed a real maturity in his filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I would argue his most culturally significant work as a filmmaker isn't a narrative film at all.
Oh, you mean Good Hair?
I mean, Good Hair from 2009.
Oh, absolutely. That film was fascinating.
He took a topic that seemed niche, the hair care industry for black women. And he treated it with the rigor of an investigative journalist, but with the wit of a stand-up comedian.
Right.
He exposed the economics, the toxic chemicals and relaxers, the intense social pressure. It won a special jury prize at Sundance. It showed that Rock wasn't just funny, he was incredibly curious. He wants to know why things are the way they are.
And recently, he's been taking some hard left turns in his acting. He starred in Fargo Season 4 as a 1950s crime boss.
A dramatic role.
And he rebooted the Saw horror franchise with Spiral.
He just refuses to be boxed in. And now, the news that he's directing a biopic on Martin Luther King Jr., produced by Steven Spielberg, I mean, that is the ultimate evolution.
It's a long way from CB4.
A very long way. It's the guy making dick jokes on HBO to the guy handling the legacy of MLK.
So he has the acclaim, he has the career, but you can't talk about Chris Rock without talking about the Oscars. It's like his recurring character in his life, and it usually brings drama.
It's a relationship that's defined by tension. He hosted in 2005, and the whole goal then was to bring edge to the ceremony.
And he did.
He did. He made that joke about Jude Law, basically asking why Jude Law is in every single movie. If you want Tom Cruise and all you can get is Jude Law, wait.
And Sean Penn did not like that one bit. He came out later and defended Jude Law on stage. It was so awkward.
But that's Rock's function. He pricks the balloon of Hollywood self-importance. In 2016, he returned to host during the hashtag Oscars a White controversy. And there was huge pressure on him to boycott.
Right, everyone was saying, Chris, don't go. You have to stand in solidarity.
But he went. And his logic was really interesting. He basically said, if I don't go, they're not going to cancel the show. They'll just hire Kevin Hart. He wanted to effect change from the inside.
The being on the stage.
Of being on the stage.
Yeah.
He addressed the lack of diversity head-on in his monologue. He called Hollywood sorority racist. He closed his monologue with Black Lives Matter. He walked a very, very tightrope that night.
But the tightrope snapped in 2022, the 94th Academy Awards. The moment that literally stopped the world for a second.
The slap. And we have to unpack this carefully because it's so easy to get lost in the gossip and the takes.
Right. Let's stick to the facts. Rock is on stage presenting Best Documentary. He makes a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head.
G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it.
Right. Jada has alopecia, an autoimmune condition that causes hair loss. Will Smith laughs at first, then he sees Jada's reaction, walks on stage, slaps Chris Rock across the face, walks back down, and starts shouting,
"Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth."
Twice.
And Rock. Looking back at the footage, Rock's reaction in that moment is almost superhuman.
That is the pain into power theme coming right back around, isn't it?
It is. It's the thesis statement. He is physically assaulted on a global stage by an A-list movie star. His immediate response, Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
He kept his composure.
He maintained his composure. He didn't fight back physically. He didn't dissolve into a puddle. He stayed on the job. He even declined to file a police report that night.
And then the silence. This is the part that fascinates me. Will Smith apologized on Instagram. He resigned from the Academy. He did the whole apology tour. Chris Rock, nothing.
Not a peep.
For a whole year.
This is a masterclass in discipline and strategy. In an era where everyone tweets their every thought immediately, Rock waited. He understood the immense power of silence. He waited until he had a microphone and a stage, specifically his live Netflix special Selective Outrage in 2023.
He monetized his response.
Exactly. He controlled the narrative on his terms, in his art form, and he got paid handsomely to do it.
And he did not hold back in that special. He went to Baltimore to film it, Jada's hometown, by the way, which is a choice.
A very deliberate choice.
And he basically argued that Will Smith practiced selective outrage because he was actually mad about the issues in his own marriage, not about the joke.
It completely changed the perception of the event. It went from Chris Rock got slapped to Chris Rock had the last word. It was the ultimate comedian's revenge. I will take your physical hit, wait a year, and then I will dismantle you with words.
Now, we've talked about the career and the controversies, but I want to pivot to the man himself. Because in the last few years, Rock has revealed a side of himself that is much more vulnerable than the, arrogant, funny guy persona he sometimes projects.
Yes. The breakdown of his marriage to Malak Compton was a major, major turning point. They were married from 1996 to 2016.
20 years.
20 years. In his divorce proceedings and later in his work, he admitted to infidelity. He admitted to a pornography addiction.
And he put that pain right into his 2018 special, Tambourine.
Yes.
That special felt so different. It was darker, more introspective. It was directed by Bo Burnham, who has a very specific, intimate style. Rock wasn't strutting the stage, he was confessing.
He was. He spoke about his failures as a husband. It was a deconstruction of his own ego. And structurally, it was less about jokes per minute and more about emotional resonance. It showed a guy who was genuinely hurting.
And then there's the health aspect. In 2020, he revealed a diagnosis that I think explains a lot about his style, but it's something I had never even heard of before. NVLD.
Nonverbal learning disorder.
Right.
This is a crucial piece of the puzzle. NVLD makes it difficult to understand nonverbal social cues. Sarcasm, body language, facial expressions, things that most of us process instinctively, he might miss completely. He essentially takes things very literally.
Wait, hold on. He's a comedian. His entire job is reading an audience. How does that even work?
It seems completely contradictory, doesn't it?
It really does.
But think about his specific comedic style. You know how Rock repeats a premise 3, 4, 5 times? Grandpa's the dad, Grandpa's the dad. He drills down into the pure logic of a situation.
Yeah, that repetition is his signature.
Well, analysts and experts suggest that might be a coping mechanism for the NVLD.
Yeah.
because he can't rely on the subtle feeling of the room or the facial expressions in the back row. He has to rely on the text.
On the words.
He relies on the logic. He constructs the joke verbally so that it is airtight. He hammers the point home until you have to agree with him purely on a verbal, logical level.
Wow. That makes so much sense. It's not just a stylistic choice, it's an adaptation. He's navigating the room by sound and logic because he can't fully trust the visuals.
Exactly. And he's talked about doing 7 hours of therapy a week to manage it.
7 hours?
That is a massive commitment to understanding yourself. It also reframes some of his past controversies.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe moments where he seemed insensitive weren't malice, but a literal inability to read the room in a nonverbal way.
We also have to touch on his views on the current climate of comedy. He's been pretty vocal about cancel culture.
He has. He's not a fan.
Huh.
In 2021, he argued that cancel culture leads to boring, unfunny material. He believes the audience already has a built-in mechanism for rejection. They just don't laugh. If it's not funny, the joke fails. That's the end of it. He argues that comedians need the right to fail.
The right to fail. I like that phrasing. Because if you're terrified of stepping over the line, you never find out where the line actually is.
Exactly. And Chris Rock has made a career of finding that line, stepping over it, looking back, and then explaining why he did it. From the niggas versus black people bit to the Oscars monologue, he tests the boundaries.
So what does this all mean? We have gone from the GED student in bedstay to the man directing a Spielberg movie. We've covered the trauma, the ancestry, the zebra, the slap.
It's a story of resilience, certainly, but I think it's more than that. It's a story of evolution. He started as a shock comic. He became a cultural commentator, then a Hollywood player, then a vulnerable, introspective artist. And through it all, he has remained a truth teller.
And a guy who is willing to take the heat for it.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. Rock once said something in an interview that I think sums up his entire philosophy better than any review could. He said, "You can't be happy that fire cooks your food and be mad it burns your fingertips."
Ooh, that is good. That lands.
It's profound, isn't it? In an era of safetyism, of carefully curated public images, Chris Rock reminds us that fire, real, raw, creative fire, is dangerous. It burns. It gets you slapped. It gets you canceled. It ruins relationships. But it is also the only thing that cooks the food.
That is a powerful place to leave it. If you haven't watched Bring the Pain or Tambourine in a while, go back and watch them with all this context in mind. The ancestry, the NVLD, the resilience, it really does hit different. Thanks for diving in with us.
Thank you.